50 real businesses, ranked from the least profitable to the most profitable. Some of these will surprise you, and the one at the very end might change how you think about money completely. Real numbers, not guesses. Let's start at the bottom. The grocery store keeps 1 to 3 cents of every dollar. Razor thin. New car dealerships run on 1 to 3% margin. A full-service restaurant nets 3 to 9%, squeezed by food and labor costs. Fine dining runs even tighter, 3 to 5%, despite the higher prices. Movie theaters barely clear 2 to 5%. Most real profit comes from concessions. Fast food does better, 6 to 10%, thanks to lower labor and faster turnover. Food trucks land at 6 to 9% lower rent, but still labor-heavy. Coffee shops typically net to 0.5 to 9% rent, and labor eat most of the margin. Well-run ghost kitchens hit 15 to 20%. No dining room costs. That's the bottom 10. Now watch how fast the numbers start climbing. Auto repair shops run 10 to 20%. Specialty shops sit at the top of that range. An established car wash nets 10 to 20%. High repeat visits, low labor per wash. Gyms typically net 10 to 15%. Membership churn is the biggest threat to that number. Barbershops and salons run about 10 to 15%, mostly a labor cost business. Dental practices net 15 to 25%, high margins thanks to cash pay services. Physician practices run 10 to 20%, with specialists like surgeons at the top. Home health agencies operate tighter, 5 to 12%, heavy on labor costs. Full hospital systems net just to 6%, massive overhead and staffing costs. Daycare centers run 5 to 10%, labor and staff ratios cap the margin. For-profit private schools typically net to 8%, tuition rarely outpaces staffing costs. We're halfway through, and this next group is where the real money starts. Law firms net 15 to 35%, minimal overhead, high billing rates per hour. Efficient accounting firms hit 20 to 30%, same low overhead advantage as law. Top consulting firms regularly exceed 30%, pure knowledge, minimal cost of goods. Wealth management firms run 20 to 35% recurring fees on assets under management. Insurance agencies net 15 to 25% commissions with low delivery cost. Mature software companies net 18 to 28% once it's built. Each new customer costs almost nothing. Most AI startups actually lose money right now. They're spending on growth before monetizing. Self-storage is one of the highest margin businesses in America, 39 to 41% net. Data centers run 20 to 30% high build cost upfront, very efficient to operate after. A vending machine route nets 10 to 20%, but almost entirely depends on location traffic. Here's where it gets interesting. Some of these next businesses look boring on the outside, but the numbers tell a different story. General retail nets just to 5%, one of the thinnest margins in the entire economy. E-commerce brands often net just 5 to 10% after shipping, ads, and returns. Construction companies typically net to 6%, thin margins on huge project costs. Real estate brokerages run 10 to 20% commission-based with low overhead. Trucking companies net just for 8%, fuel and driver costs dominate. Third-party logistics firms net 5 to 10%, a bit better through scale and automation. Last-mile delivery runs for 9%, thin margins on a race against the clock. Container shipping swings wildly from losses to over 20% margins, purely on freight rates. Airlines run razor-thin, 3 to 7% in good years and often negative in downturns. Hotels typically net 5 to 15%, swinging heavily with occupancy rates. 10 left. This is the top of the list, and it includes some of the most controversial businesses in the world. Established casinos net 15 to 25%. The house edge is a very real number. A well-established winery can net 10 to 20%, but most small wineries barely break even in early years. Most professional sports clubs run near break even. Most revenue gets reinvested straight into players. Pharmaceutical manufacturing nets 15% or more. Patents remove the competition for years. General manufacturing runs 5 to 8%. Equipment and raw materials eat the rest. Gold mining nets 10 to 25% when prices are high and can turn negative when they're not. Oil and gas economics depend entirely on price. The same rig can swing from loss to 20% profit. Private prison operators typically net 10 to 15%, one of the more controversial line items on this list. Regulated power utilities, including nuclear, net a steady 8 to 12%, predictable, but capped by regulation. That's all 50 from grocery stores barely keeping 1%, to self-storage keeping over 40%. If you made it this far, you now know more about how businesses actually make money than most business owners do. Subscribe for more real business economics.